few seconds. It's like a little bit of delay here. Okay, it says we're live.
All right. Well, good evening and welcome to the Transportation and Public Works meeting for Monday, November 16th, 2020, 6 p.m. meeting. And I'd like to go ahead and start with the roll call. I think that we'll do a very simple one. There's only two of us here, so we'll start with Mayor Knudsen.
Mayor Knudsen is here.
Okay, and Councilor Prachu is here, and so the committee members welcome invited guests. So we'll start off with the approval of the minutes for the October 31st meeting. Everybody's had a chance to review those. They were very helpful, very well done. Thank you. I wanted to do, as part of an educational piece, kind of what we are looking at here, folks that are tuning in or viewing later on, is that we have the minutes here, and those are available on the city's website. So you could go to, not website, but the City of Crestwell's website. And within there are the minutes and the agendas for the meeting. And we're looking at those through here, and you can dive in and see the details there. So I thought I would do a quick screen share for those who don't know how to find those, and then you can see the things that we're doing. So, with that, I will ask if it's time to review those, or are we ready for a motion to approve?
I think we're ready for a motion.
Although, did I jump the gun on the agenda? Let me double check. That's the first item, so let's go ahead and do that if you would.
I move we approve the minutes for the October 5th meeting.
Okay. Second that. So that would go to a vote. So all in favor of that, please say, or do we roll call that one too? I'll start with the mayor.
Aye. We approve.
Okay. I think those minutes are approved, folks. So that's how we do it at these committee meetings. So that moves on to the next subject, and that would be public input. I don't know, do we have any tonight that we know of? Okay.
Is it just the five of us? Sorry, I just needed to. Is it just the five of us? There's nobody else here? Oh, okay.
It's just us tonight. So, having no public input, we'll move on to item number 3, which was a discussion of a survey for gauging public response to street project funding options. So in our last meeting, we had a really good discussion for it only being an hour. We heard from our engineers, our finance director, from our city manager. We also had Mr. Bill Spencer on the call. Also has a stake in different funding options that we have for street projects here in Crestwell. So I'm just going to open up the floor to maybe what ways, so kind of dialing back to our last meeting, I think where we ended is that we knew that we had all of these options, but that we wanted to find a way to gauge how the public feels about these different funding mechanisms. So that's kind of the focus of our meeting tonight, is how do we create a survey. It's not just trying to ask questions, but also to educate folks and help them understand how different options work. I open the floor to anybody that has any ideas that we'd like to put forward for the survey. So we did have a couple of things that Manager Amberg had forwarded to us, and we could certainly look at that. Came via email. Do you want to dive in and start there, possibly?
I could talk about the email I sent out. I was trying to think about a few things, and I've added a couple things actually onto this list as well, that might be good in a survey. And one of the first things I think that might be good is to ask people if they actually know which streets belong to the city of Cresswell. And so to have a list of streets there that people could put a check mark next to, that they believe are owned by the city of Cresswell, and then at the bottom explain, well, not all these streets are owned by the city of Cresswell. These are the streets that are not. And then a question, a yes or no question says, do you believe Cresswell needs to invest in its streets? Yes or no? And then we could say something like, Cresswell has identified the following streets for improvements. We value your opinion about, which one to undertake first. Please rank these from 1 to 6 in order of importance. And then they could do that. And then we could develop a section that might be a little bit more complicated. It might involve doing some math. So I don't know how many people will do that part of it. Maybe what we do is we try to explain, that if the city were to put in a 50-cent levy, we would raise $900,000 over the 5 years. A levy can only last 5 years, and it has to be for very specific things. If the city were to put in a 3 cents a gallon gas tax, we could raise $200,000 per year. If we had a local improvement district, how much is it per linear foot for sidewalk, curb, and gutter, Cliff?
It's approximately $50 a foot.
$50. Okay, so we could put that in there, that local improvement district would raise $50 per linear foot of sidewalk, curb, and gutter, and then every 5 cents of a bond would raise, almost $20,000 per year. So knowing this, fund at 2nd Street. How would you go about funding 2nd Street? What combination would you use, and how would you come up with the $2.4 million that's needed for 2nd Street? How would you come up with the $1.6 million for the D or F Street extension through Bald Knob to the freeway intersection, or any of those? I just think that might be an interesting exercise for some people. I think it might be very off-putting for others, but I think those were my thoughts anyway.
I like what you've mentioned, and you had alluded to something, which is the math part of it. There's some people that are really great at math, and I'm not one of those people, and so I kind of tend to, not do it if I don't have to. I'm wondering, can we do an online calculator on the website that people could go to and kind of plug in certain numbers and have it for them, or is that a little too complicated?
I don't have the ability to develop anything like that. I don't know. Jim is pretty sophisticated in his understandings, far more than I am. But it wouldn't be very good to have it would be pretty neat if we could embed it into the survey. I guess the survey could, what you're suggesting is link over to it, and then they could play with that, and then they could put the numbers into the survey.
Maybe. I was anything that kind of helps people get through that, I think is a plus, and I might be able to help with that. I've done stuff like that before.
Right.
I think that's a neat idea.
You could just do an average. The average frontage is approximately 75 feet. The average house value in the city, I don't know, that would be 280,000, or you could just do an average.
I think that might be good, but I think also people are going to want to figure it out based on their own situation. I noticed that when we did the policing one, people used their own, and they know their own more than they know anybody else's. Plus, we're not that far out from people paying their taxes right now.
Right. I did create an Excel worksheet this afternoon to kind of answer some of Michelle's questions. And if you'd like, I could share that. If we have, I'll share my desktop. I'll share that with you.
Share the figures, finance director.
This is the worksheet I built. And what it
Hit
does
me with the
is
digits.
Show me the money.
it starts with the taxable value of all the property in Cresswell, and then of course divides it by 1,000 per thousand. Levy rate is just a plug. You can put whatever amount you want in here, and it starts calculating. Typically, there's some discount on taxes. You pay early, plus you may not get all of them. So a good estimate is about 92% of total taxable, total tax to come up with the total tax collectible. And then what that does is then carries over to the debt service side. So say you wanted to borrow the money, knowing that the tax revenues are coming in, and then the number of payments over the years. This is for a 15-year bond, but we change it to 5 years. And then some assumed interest rate. When it comes time to finance, you can dial that in to whatever the market rates are, whatever you end up borrowing at to get the total borrowing amount. But you can see from the worksheet, though, that it is just a plug and chug. This side just takes the net present value of those payments, and this side just calculates what the tax would bring in. As far as embedding it in a website, I'm not sure how to do that. Councilor Procius, that might be something a little more IT savvy than myself. But we could definitely put a worksheet up with a link.
Yeah, let me kind of contemplate how that might be possible, if it's doable. I mean, and I guess that I just kind of see it as an advantage for people that are trying to say or figure out, how does this hit me personally? You know, so there's a way that we can make that clear. I think that's good.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like, we could put in the value of, they could input the value of their home and see what that does to their total tax bill. So similar to what it calculates here for total tax.
Yeah, that would be. I mean, this information is helpful as well, so I think it's a combination of it, really.
The more transparent we can be on what we're asking for and why we're asking for it, the better results we can have on getting what we want. I mean, I don't like to pay extra taxes if I don't know what it's going towards, and I'm not going to support something that I have zero information about and zero information on how it's going to affect me. So I think the more work we can put into that, the more helpful it is to voters and to our citizens.
I totally agree. One thing that might be kind of a concern is that depending on who's benefiting from the projects, trying to get the whole community to understand the bigger picture, and that maybe they don't live over on 2nd Street, that really need an overhaul. But it's really good for the city as a whole that we do that project, because first of all, the safety issues, right? And then also there's development in that area and things like that. So it's kind of that balance between how does it hit me personally, but also what's better for the greater good in the city that I think we're trying to hit home.
So maybe of those 6 that I chose out, I don't know if those are the correct 6 or not, we could explain why we think those are important.
Yeah, I think that's important to do.
Somebody is outside. Oh, hi, Sam. Somebody's outside my window.
So I know that we kind of talked about maybe, though, understanding what people's priorities were, but I know we're saying that here are the 6 we think they are. Maybe we could do that, say here are the 6, and then maybe you tell us if there's one you think that's more important than these 6.
I can tell you everyone is going to say the jog. Everyone. Yeah. So, I mean, we need to push that out of people's minds. That is not one that we have control over or that we want to undertake at this time, because if we do that, we're not going to repair any other streets for years.
Do you mean the Highway 99 railroad crossing?
Yes, that whole intersection. I just was adding it up, and if you take all the pieces and add them together, it's over $33 million.
Well, Mr. Spencer seemed to think that that wasn't an important issue to people. He said that at our last meeting that he doesn't think people will get behind that funding.
I disagree. I think
that's what I've been hearing the entire time I've been on city council. I've been hearing fix that part, and then but I'm surprised when he said that. But he must have some sort of inside information to people that tell him, forget it.
Maybe his group says that, and they're people who want to develop and they want their properties to have the benefit of that being developed. But everywhere that we did the transportation system plan, that came up. So I think the average person who lives here wants to have that done. What is your impression, Cliff?
No, I believe that's the number one project in everybody's mind, because that's the road that everybody travels to get in and out of town. Everybody sees it. Not everybody sees 2nd Street. They don't all go, south of Oregon Avenue. I guess my take on it is we have a transportation system plan that outlines the top priorities, and those priorities could switch around, but I believe there's 10. I don't have it in front of me, but I think there's 10 projects that are outlined as some of the higher priorities, and those are what we need to look at, I believe.
I don't think so. They're mostly, I think they're crossing projects, crosswalk projects that wound up being on the schools. The immediate 1 to 5 years is Oregon Avenue, Oregon 99 Front Street, interim intersection improvements. That's number one. Not sure what that is.
The transportation or the pedestrian upgrades, I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the actual street list.
Oh, okay. Well, this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 immediate projects. And so you just want to look at the M projects? No, you want to look at the modernization projects?
The projects that address the actual street upgrade.
Some of them are modern. You'd have to go through and tell me what the top 10 are, because based on the coding on here, I can't really tell. There's a Northwest School District multi-use path, Meadow Lane, Cedar Court, Cherry Lane, interim modernization of OR 99, Oregon Avenue, Mill Street, intersection pedestrian improvements. I think if it's got a P in front of it, it's a pedestrian improvement. But the MMs seems to be the ones, the modernization improvement. And those are listed as intermediate 6 to 10 years. And that's D Street, A Street, which we just did. Something, excuse me, I got to go find out what's going on out in the lobby.
So the 2nd Street was another one on that list of intermediate 6 to 10 years.
Right, that list that Michelle has there were the top items that we could afford. So they were kind of the cheaper projects that we could knock off within the next 1 to 5 years. Those aren't the bigger projects that I think we're trying to address.
Just my husband doing something weird. Okay. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. So what I'm hearing is that maybe we need to kind of review the list again and kind of figure out what those top six are. Although I have to admit a little bit of confusion with regards to is anybody else getting big feedback or kind of choppy audio?
Yeah.
I'm getting that with everybody, but I can speak slowly. I don't know if that helps us here. So Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. I'm just hearing choppy feedback even in my own audio. So, there we go. Yeah, it seemed like it was kind of choppy from him. So anyway, so just getting a handle on the 6. But what I was confused about was with regards to the jog project, because I was hearing that we didn't think that that we needed to get rid of that idea or not focus on that because that's so much money. But then I'm also hearing that it's also the biggest concern. And then I'm also hearing that, so when we were talking about Mr. Spencer was that I think that, yeah, everybody probably would say it's the biggest priority. Yeah, and they would love to see it fixed. What he may not think is that people will get behind the actual money and that it takes to fix it. What I got out of that. So.
The way he explained it, I was confused by his wording because it seemed like nobody cares about that. Nobody's going to put their money behind it. I mean, those are two separate things. People could care about it, but they don't want to spend the $10 million to fix it. And I totally get that. But it was confusing to me to think that nobody cares about it because I feel like a lot of people do. And that's a lot of the people's concerns. That's what I've been hearing for years and years. But I totally get that. Is that something we're really going to take on and try to put all of our funding towards? I don't think that's a great use of all the funding that we want to have to complete multiple projects.
I think that it'd be better on that funding to wait until there's a federal package and then try to get some state funding to do that kind of a project. However, I have heard people say, I don't care what it takes. That needs to be done first because until you do that, you can't get people in and out of the city. And that's kind of true. Not only that, it creates an issue for the fire department. We really do need an overpass over the railroad tracks so that they have an unobstructed access to both sides, the east and the west side.
So is that...
go ahead.
Well, you mentioned the fire district. So is that something that their district can raise money for? They can't put any sort of bond or anything because it's a city and a federal or a state highway. So.
Well, they won't own any part of it. They don't have jurisdiction over it. It's not something. However, you could maybe ask them to write a letter that says this will assist us in this way. But if you're going to do it in a year where they're also going for a levy, they won't give you the support that you might anticipate.
Okay.
Manager Amberg, just kind of briefly before we went online with the meeting, we had brought up that pass through the punch through for the right of way to get through past the former Super 8 and then eventually out to 99 there at F Street. Was that right?
Yeah, either 99 or at F or D streets, one of the two. We haven't quite engineered that portion of it yet.
I mean, that strikes me as kind of an interesting possible balance, but you didn't seem to think so, but it's one way that we could help kind of offload some of that traffic. And I don't know, I would think that if we had improvement in that way, that maybe then that would help kind of get people through town in another safe way, at least in some of them, and could help kind of spur further development, possibly. I don't know.
Actually, I think that's exactly what will happen. I think people, if we were to put that through, people on the south side of town would use it. I know I would, and it's not that hard to get from. It's very easy to get from F Street to Oregon Avenue or from D Street to Oregon Avenue on 2nd Street or even 1st Street for D Street. It would, I think, one thing that was not considered when we were talking about that as an option, though, was to do an overpass over the rail. And I don't know if rail allows overpasses or not. I would think that they would certainly have to have limits to how high they can do things. So it would take to stack stuff on their their trailers and their cars. But I think that it would be worth looking into, and I think that is a real possible solution. And I was looking at the cost of that, and without an overpass, which is going to be incredibly expensive, don't get me wrong, but that's $1.6 million just to go down and around through Bald Knob. And I think that is the solution, one of the best solutions to this jog issue that we have. Is just to bypass it. And that would also mean bypassing it, probably doing the Cobalt extension to Highway 99.
Kind of like those creative ways of thinking about this one, because when you can't solve a problem, it's go around. So I wonder if we could maybe include that in the survey as kind of a potential option for one of the projects.
I think it's important to address that since it's such a big problem to everybody. Just let them know we're thinking about it. It's a lot of money. Here are some other options we're looking at that cost less.
Cliff, do you feel comfortable taking a guess at what a bridge like that would cost, an overpass? 5 million, 7 million, 10 million?
1 billion?
$1 billion. Talking, but we're not hearing him. We need to. Sorry, Cliff.
I forgot. Jim muted me. Sorry. Yeah, that 10 to 12 mark is what I've heard thrown around for an overpass.
Thanks, Cliff.
So am I hearing that we think that we need the overpass to do this project, or that it would just be nice if we did?
The street was planned without the overpass. It's just with an overpass, you would have direct connection. You wouldn't have to wait for a train to go by. You wouldn't have to wait for an intersection light to go through or anything like that. It might hurt businesses immediately. So it might hurt the B&B's business if you're on D Street. If you're on F Street, there's some apartments there that might be impacted by an overpass. And also there's a business that's right there on the corner that might be impacted. The car repair business, I think that's pretty new, that went in there, might be impacted by the overpass. I just have to look and see how much space there is, and none of that has been discussed that I'm aware of.
I keep hearing that we have options, really, and it's always, of course, about the money. But it seems to me that maybe there is something that could be a good solution that might fit within the town's pocketbook, so to speak. But yeah, it sounds great. I'd love to see that as a survey option amongst the others that we think are the top priorities. And then I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I still kind of like the idea of an other, just to see what people are thinking.
Cliff, could you get our engineers to give you kind of a drawing and an estimate of what that overpass might look like, how much room it might take up, if it's even possible on D or F Street?
Yeah, they can do a mock-up and an approximate estimate. Yeah, that's not a problem.
Thank you.
So I guess that's good, but if we have the ability to do something that's not with an overpass, do we want that to show that as an option, and maybe that's 2 options? Or
the difficulty with getting the F or D Street through is the fact that still requires cooperation with the rail. So we would probably lose the Mill Street crossing down at the south. in order to have a crossing at either D or F, if they were willing to consider that as an option. There's a lot of ifs up in the air, and all this stuff needs to be negotiated. It's really a long-term sort of putting in streets. You takes a while.
Whereas like other streets may be easier to do. Yeah.
Yes, A Street is a good example. It took all summer. It's done. It looks great. There weren't a whole lot of real negotiations that had to be undertaken. There was some surprises. I'm not going to say there weren't any surprises this summer, but all in all, it was a pretty normal sort of street. And I should let Cliff answer that question. He's more of an expert at it than I am.
So I don't know if this is off topic. I'm looking on my phone on RLID at the alignments for D Street and F Street. If that's what we're talking about, is swinging that bypass. The D Street alignment has quite a few properties in the way that we would have to buy a bunch of different right-of-ways, and it looks like there's some buildings that are too close. The F Street alignment has a lot more open space to be able to run a road through. So just looking at alignments, F Street would be the easiest one to get that swing through, because that basically comes in right on the northern edge of Bald Knob. The other one comes in kind of behind D Street alignment, kind of behind the motel. I don't know if that's helpful information.
Would there be anybody affected by that, or possibly needing to?
Yeah, I think the first block of F Street right off of 99 would be impacted, but the street could probably come over the top of 99 and come down and stop at the corner of 2nd and F, and then those people would have to like go around the block to get to 99 and get to some of their places. But it would come out probably right where the apartments are for the second half of the block. So the Section 8 apartments and the senior apartments would still be able to access the street, but those first two businesses right off of 99 probably would be impacted by the abutments for the bridge.
If we're going to mute you again, if that's okay. So I guess that when we talk about these kinds of options, the only thing that I would be careful about, because I've seen this before with rapid transit in Eugene, Springfield area, where ideas started coming out before they didn't properly engage with businesses and landowners in that area before. They were just like, oh, here's an idea we have, and it was like, wait, you didn't talk to us, It's like, no, it's just an idea. It's not even a thing yet, but they didn't feel engaged. So I guess that I would just say that if we were going to bring this up as a conversation piece, that we try to do that early on. And I don't know, maybe that's actually out of the scope of what we were trying to do with just the survey.
It might be a little bit further down the road.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. I'm just saying that I sometimes perception is kind of the big of it. So
that's always part of the problem in doing a project with the city, is once they find out the city's interested, all of a sudden the property becomes its highest value it has ever been in its entire life.
Okay, so we don't want to do this. So just kind of continuing along the lines of the survey topic, it sounds like we have some ideas here, but do we want, are there others that we want to discuss, or do we kind of maybe do a little research first on those options? Where do we want to go?
Well, I think Cliff is going to get us at least outline of whether or not the F and D Street is kind of possible, so we can get our minds around that. If it is, then maybe it is worthwhile to go and talk to the owners of those two properties and let them know that we are thinking about this and it may be a #1 priority. But you know, if you're going to do that, you're going to have to do Second Street right away, because Second Street is going to have a bunch of impacts to it from that level of traffic, I think, going down it.
So this of course speaks to the projects that we want to do, and then we still have the whole funding and how do we make that happen piece, obviously. So it sounds like it'll be quite an interesting survey when we're all ready to put that out. Yeah.
It's kind of a chicken and egg too. It's like, do you go for the funding part first, or do you go for the explaining the traffic issues first? How do you want to go about this? Do you want to make it a, you know, you could do something that'd be kind of interesting, and we could put it on Facebook, as we could do, I know Cliff's done this in the past. He's been kind of the star in little YouTube videos, and he's gone around and he's talked about the streets. And we could take these 5 or 6 streets, and he could tell people about them. We could show them pictures of what he means and when he talks about it. And we could put those on Facebook, and we could put those on the city's website. And then after that, then we do the survey and say, which ones do you want? And we could do a little survey with Jim, and we could have Jim explain what's the difference between a levy and a bond and the gas tax. Maybe he and, go ahead.
Yeah, that was put on by Rick Dancer. So I was in the video answering some questions, but we hired Rick to answer, and he did a very good job.
We can use some street money for that.
I totally like this idea of where it's headed, and it reminds me a little bit of what we did with the public safety question and the funding of additional deputies. I think we kind of hit it more from a, you know, how do you feel about things first before we said, here's the options and stuff like that. So I think that model might work for us here.
I love this idea. I think it's better to get people talking and interested, and those that are interested will engage and say, ooh, what's going on here? And maybe they'll start thinking about it and traveling those streets and looking at it. And those that don't want to be engaged won't. And then when we have a survey, then the people that know what's going on are more likely to engage in that survey because they've already been informed about all the things that are going on. So I think that's a good first step versus a survey.
Okay, I think that sounds fine too. So go ahead and go that route. What do we want to do then? So that it sounds like a bit of work to pull that together. What do we all need to do to help out with that, and what are our next steps for our next meeting? We want to give the rest of the year to pull that kind of stuff together and talk about it next year, or do we want to try to meet one more time this year?
Do you want to talk to Rick Dancer? Do you want to, I mean, really putting the video together, you kind of just wait till good weather. Rick asks all the good questions.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, engaging with him and telling him, you know, we've got some street projects that need to happen. Could you help us get the word out and get some community engagement going? And if Cliff's willing to be our spokesperson to show all the terrible things going on in our streets and make them look really bad, then maybe people will get behind funding them. That's the hope.
And as soon as I get the video, we can put it on our website and we can put it on Facebook. It's pretty simple, actually. It just takes some timing and what Cliff's timing looks like. And you know how this COVID thing is shaping up too. I don't know how we do this with COVID right at our door.
The best laid plans can sometimes be affected. Yeah. And it sounds to me like if we're talking weather dependent and schedule dependent and things like that, we might not be able to say that we can eat quite until we hear back and know when that might be able to happen. Is but at the same time, I think that we might be able to say that we're done for this year while we work on that. Would that be a fair statement? And then that could be picked up by the committee in January again. I'm not hearing you.
Oh, I did it again. Flipped the switch the wrong direction.
Okay.
So maybe in January we can also revisit some of the questions for the survey and continue to work on that at the same time that we're developing the website video. Does Rick need to meet with us to find out what we want? So he does need to meet with this committee. So that's a question. Do you want to meet with him in January, or do you want to meet with him before then, before Christmas?
That's subject to his availability, I suppose. So, yeah, I always, if it's something that we can do, I certainly don't mind trying to do it. That being said, I don't know the answer.
There's not a lot of time before the end of December. Maybe January?
Yeah. I think that's probably fair to pull it together and, make the contacts and stuff like that. So, and maybe by the time we get engaged with him, we'll have some good weather too.
Okay.
All right. So schedule-wise, looking there, I think that we will set the date for the next meeting in January. So we'll start talking again right after the council is seated in that, and then figure out where to go from there. That being it, does anybody else have anything for the good of the order to begin? Mayor?
Sorry, just for the minute. So at the next meeting, we'll discuss featuring our streets with Rick Dancer and possibly having a meeting with him.
To develop short videos.
And
were we going to talk more survey then, or just kind of keep it to that one subject and then talk survey later? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
I'm okay with postponing survey discussions until after we get some videos up and going and some community engagement. Because then I think we'll know what to ask and how to ask it.
Perfect. Sounds good to me.
So next meeting to be determined.
Meet you, yeah.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, for your time this evening. Really appreciate it. Really good discussion. And see you again next time. Thanks.
I'm just glad there wasn't a boogeyman in the hallway. Good night.
Good night, Al.
Good night. Are we out, Jim? Or